Alright, man, this is episode number 67 of the Cozy Corner of Cinema. This is being recorded on Saturday, July 8th, 2023 at 1:38 p.m. The morning started off pretty cloudy, and apparently it's gonna thunderstorm later on today, but it looks pretty sunny out right now, I gotta say. Perfect time to be outside, to be reading, to be getting some physical activities, man. Beautiful days like these, man, you really want to take advantage of. And I say that all the time, but truly, man, you don't want to pass on days like these and just sit around and do nothing and, wonder why you didn't get anything done. Unless that's what you want to do, man, then, you sit around, you do nothing, and if that's just going to fulfill you, then you do it, man. You're the leader of your own life. No point doing anything you don't want to do if you don't need to do it, man. Well, we're already in the first quarter of July, man, and that Criterion sale is going on at Barnes & Noble right now, and also on Amazon for the most part. I believe that Amazon matches almost all the titles. An acquaintance of mine said that there were some that they weren't, but I don't. He didn't give me any specific titles, so I'm not really sure about that. Yeah, man, I ended up grabbing a couple titles the other day or so. I really don't like to shop in person. I'm more just buying titles online. You have a bigger selection to choose from. You don't gotta worry about driving and parking and walking all the way through the store getting to it, man. I'm just totally over all that stuff, man. But I did end up going into Barnes & Noble just out of curiosity, and I ended up grabbing a couple titles, not going too crazy, when I was, years ago, I'd buy stacks and stacks of Blu-rays and stuff, and, I'd still love to, but, with, some stuff going on, got to save up for, some, future stuff down the line. I'm doing some traveling later this year, so got to save some money for that. So I didn't go too crazy. They didn't have exactly what I was looking for, but I did grab a couple titles. I grabbed that Michael Haneke set of The Seventh Continent, Benny's Video, and the third film, which I'm blanking on the name on. I've only seen The Seventh Continent. Benny's Video was one that was a little tricky to find for a while, and then an acquaintance of mine gave me his login for the Criterion channel, and I was like, oh, that's great, Benny's Video's on there, I'm gonna watch that, and I never did. But now I got it, man. But I talked about The Seventh Continent may have actually been the first film I talked about on the show all the way back in March 2022, and I think it's just a brilliant film. Michael Haneke is just such an interesting filmmaker, and it's a very downbeat, nihilistic sort of film, but very powerful stuff, man. Just the way that he directs it is so great. I also ended up grabbing two Melville films, Jean-Pierre Melville. I grabbed Les Samurai, which I've never seen before, man. It's one of these films that I always hear discussed in the French New Wave, and I'm just like, why have I not watched that yet? So now I got that, and Army of Shadows, which as well, I don't know how much Melville I've seen, but I definitely want to be on those two. There were some other titles I wanted to grab, they just didn't have, man. I wanted to finally grab the Blu-ray of Vivre sa vie from Jean-Luc Godard. I watched that recently on TCM. I recorded that, and what a terrific film, man. I thought that was so fantastic. It's definitely probably top 5 Godard right there, man. I thought it was really great. And a little while ago I was wondering, had I seen his sophomore film Le Petit Soldat, and I hadn't. I have the Criterion of that, but it's still sealed, so I must have not watched it. It's like some of these films, they ended up kind of blending together in a way. I remember I would get certain of his films mixed up that felt a little similar, but either way, Vivre sa vie will be picked up at some point soon. And like I was saying last time, I definitely want to get that Norman Mailer DVD set. That's I think I'm definitely gonna be grabbing that before the end of the month, as well as the two titles I talked about, two of the Criterions I talked about on the last Blu-ray episode, the Bud Bedecker Western box set and After Hours on 4K. Those will be picked up absolutely, undoubtedly. And usually I think Arrow has their sale as well, but I don't think it's started yet, or they're doing something different. I could have sworn they had their sales in July as well as Criterion, but when I was looking up some titles, they weren't on sale, because it's definitely a couple box sets I'd love to get on. The Shawscope Volume 2, and especially the Lucas Moodysson set is what I really want to grab. I've been having my eye on that for a while, but I didn't really want to pay $75, $80 for it. But that'll be bought in due time. That'll definitely be in the conscious of when the opportunity arises to get it at a cheaper price, because he's a filmmaker I find so interesting, and I've only seen one of his films, which is Fucking a Mall, which I talked about for my 1998 episode, which I thought was a really touching coming-of-age story. but some of his other films, I've always known about films like Lilia Forever, which I always hear talked about in terms of like these like people talk about most disturbing films and stuff, but I just am looking at it more from a drama perspective. I don't really care about most disturbing films or anything like that, or trying to. When I was younger, I tried to do a lot of that. I try to see every film that was considered like controversial or disturbing. And I think I've seen about most of them. I would say I don't. Anytime I see people talk about a film being disturbing or upsetting or anything like that, I usually have already seen it. But that's one that I haven't seen, so that'll be watched in due time, of course. Yeah, man, so make sure you're getting on these titles. I'm sure there's endless videos and people online who can give you tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of recommendations for plenty of great films from Criterion and Arrow, and Vinegar Syndrome just had their a subscriber week this week, so I ended up grabbing a couple titles I didn't previously own. I didn't grab a whole lot. I grabbed Six String Samurai, which is a VSU title. I've heard mixed things about, but I'm curious to get it. I really like those box sets they do. I think I only own a couple of them. I own Beastmaster, Roadhouse, and Cloak and Dagger, and I'm a big fan of all three of those films. Cloak and Dagger especially was such a great surprise. I knew Brian Sauer was a big fan of that film, and I remember I saw that around the same time that I had seen The Last Starfighter, and I got those two mixed up. I'm sorry, I didn't get them mixed up, but I associate them with each other because it's these 80s films about these kids playing games and stuff, much in line with the film like War Games with Matthew Broderick, which I'm a big fan of, and Ali Sheedy. But Last Starfighter was cool. I thought it was a good film, but Cloak and Dagger, I just really thought was great. That was just totally, and when I say surprise, I'd heard of it before. I knew it was a kind of a cult film, but actually seeing it, especially on that beautiful 4K, I think Vinegar Syndrome are one of the top companies in terms of their transfers that they're doing, them and like Blue Underground. I think their transfers are really second to none from any other label going. But either way, yeah. So that is over now, though. But they always have these big kind of events. But I also grabbed another title, which I guess I'll talk about a little bit in terms of a film that I watched last night. And I'm going to pull this up right here, actually. I always say I'm going to talk about certain things, and then when push comes to shove, I'm never prepared. And I don't want to keep constantly pausing and, restarting, because I don't want to lose my train of thought. Yeah, I also grabbed from this company, Circle Collective. I grabbed the double feature of these two films directed by Aaron Katz, Quiet City and Dance Party USA. Aaron Katz directed a film I like a lot from 2010 called Cold Weather. And there's an actor in that film who, when I saw that film, I'd seen him in two other films around that time that I was like, this guy's so good. I barely, how is he popping up in all these films? It's this actor, Raul Castillo, or Castillo, I'm not sure how to say his name. But I saw him in two films around the same time as I watched Cold Weather. Actually, I'm sorry, 3 films. The Inspection from last year, which was very good. I actually think that's a really terrific film. Great character study about a gay man who is feeling out of place in the world and ultimately doesn't know what to do. He's very isolated and joins the military because he feels that he has an obligation to himself to do that. It's a terrific film that went very underseen last year with a great lead performance by Jeremy Pope. But he was also in Cha Cha Real Smooth from director, what the hell's his name? Cooper Raiff. I thought it was a great film, man. And it's unfortunate that it's an Apple TV film because unless you have Apple TV, it's probably not going to get a physical release. I had seen this film theatrically, and I heard good things about his debut film. I think it was called Shithouse or Doghouse, or what was it called? Shithouse, that's right. I heard very good things about it, so I definitely want to get on that. I've heard it's actually better than Cha Cha Real Smooth. And the other film that I had seen him in, well, he was also in the film Hustle from 2022, which I liked quite a bit. But We the Animals from 2018, which I watched for the 2018 episode, which was a total surprise, man. I thought it was a really, really solid film. He plays a father who is, a very complicated character. He can be very cruel and demeaning, but then kind and charismatic. He's a terrific actor, man. But anyways, I'm going off on a tangent there. It seems to be the pattern of the show. But he was in that film Cold Weather. And I think I'd seen that film after I'd seen those ones. And I was just like, oh, that's great. He's showing up in this. And Cold Weather is a very low-key film, man. I mean, it's a mystery comedy that has a serious kind of subject, but it's interesting the way that it does it. Because as this guy's ex-girlfriend goes missing, and the way the film plays out, it's almost nonchalant in a way. It's got a very relaxed sort of style to it, sort of feeling. I should also say it's written by Brandon McFadden and Ben Stamler. But I watched that film, I don't even know, I think I watched it on like some free service or anything like that, something like that. Because I heard Brian Sauer talk about it, and he'd been a big fan of it. And he really turned me on to that. But yeah, I'm definitely interested in his other two works. Or his other works, I should say, in this collection of Quiet City and Dance Party USA. I really know nothing about them, but I really enjoy. I found myself enjoying a lot of these Mumblecore type films, which, for the most part, there's something about them I just find really engaging. I really like the relaxed, nonchalant attitude, the seemingly plotless films, which I don't give a damn about the plot if the film is good itself, man, if I'm enjoying these characters. But last night I watched one of Andrew Bujalski's, is that how you say his name? Bujalski? I watched one of his films from 2014. This film, Listen Up, Philip. And I think I've seen, I'm sorry, not Andrew, I'm getting my people mixed up, it's Alex Ross Perry. I apologize. I'm associating all these kind of guys together, but Alex Ross Perry also did a film that I liked from 2017, which was technically a 2018 film. He did this film Golden Exits, which I liked quite a bit, and he's done a couple other films like Her Smell, also from 2018, which I didn't get an opportunity to watch. And he also has done other films like Queen of Earth and The Color Wheel. But I watched this film last night because in relation, I was thinking about the work of Andrew Bujalski in context, because it's a lot of the same actors that appear in a lot of these films. Jason Schwartzman, Elizabeth Moss was doing a lot of these films. What the hell's that actor's name? Jess Wexler, Keith Poulsen, who are actually both in the film that I think is actually pretty good, that I don't really hear talk about, is this film from 2012 called Somebody Up There Likes Me. Very low-key comedy. You also have like Caitlin Scheel, who's been in like a bunch of stuff. I think a lot of horror fans probably know her too. She's been in stuff like You're Next and The Sacrament, and anyways, but yeah, these kind of films I find myself oddly attracted to in a way. I'm not really sure why. That film that I was talking about earlier this year that I watched, I think on the first day of January this year, was that film Something Anything. I watched it on Mubi, and it was just a total surprise. It was such a touching and romantic and just heartfelt film, and that I just don't hear, that no one's talking about, you know? The director, I don't know, I haven't seen anything else that he's done, and I don't think he's done a whole lot, but that was one of these films that I watched that it just really stuck with me, just certain moments, and the lead performance by actor Ashley Shelton, I shall say the director's name is Paul Harrell, and it was hard to find some of his any kind of like contact of any of his work, you know, in terms of like he has other work, but you know it was kind of difficult to come across. He did a follow-up film from 2019 called Light from Light, which I'm not familiar with, and he's done a bunch of shorts before this. But yeah, all these sort of films I just find so interesting. Some obviously I think are stronger than others. Like I was saying with Andrew Bujalski, is that I recently got his film Funny Ha Ha from, I don't know who put that out. That was one of the Vinegar Syndrome OCN titles, one of their partner label titles, and it's just such a great film. Big fan of that film, and I think I like almost all of his films that I've seen, and I think I've seen almost all of them. So he directed Funny Ha Ha in 2002, which actually was released in 2005, and he also did a film Mutual Appreciation, which I haven't seen. Then in 2009, I'm only talking about his feature films, not any of his shorts or anything else that he's done. Yeah, Mutual Appreciation, I'm going to have to get on that. I would like to watch that. 2009, he did a film Beeswax, which I think is alright. I'm not the biggest fan of that film, but it's got some good moments in that. Computer Chess from 2013, which almost feels like a film directed by, I gotta look up the name, I apologize, by Matt Johnson, director of The Dirties, Operation Avalanche and Blackberry. It feels like that kind of observational, almost mockumentary way. But that's an interesting film as well. And then he did the film Results in 2015 with Guy Pearce and Colby Smulders and who was the third actor in that? I'm blanking on the name. And Kevin Corrigan, that's right. Just talked about him recently. And then he did the film Support the Girls in 2018, which I really liked. I just thought that was such a interesting and enjoyable comedy drama with a great lead performance by Regina Hall. Just really terrific stuff. And Haley Lu Richardson, I've talked about a bunch on the show. She's becoming one of my favorite actors up and coming. I've talked about her film Montana Story before that she did with Owen Teague, and it's just such a shame that it is still, like, I don't hear anyone talking about that film, and it's so good. It was like my second or third favorite film of 2021, or 2022, I'm sorry. And she was also in After Yang, which I talked about, which made my top 10 of 2021. But anyways, yeah, I went off on a whole other thing there. But anyways, on the complete flip side, I want to talk about a film that I rewatched recently. I've been on another Christopher Nolan kick, with the upcoming release of Oppenheimer in a couple of weeks. I've mentioned before, I got my tickets for that. Got in IMAX, and what I'm especially looking forward to is the 70mm IMAX projection. That's going to be fantastic. So I've been on a kick of rewatching some of his recent work. I had rewatched Dunkirk again, and I think that's just a brilliant film. I think it's probably my favorite of his work. It's the strongest, I believe, and it's some of his strongest directorial work. And I rewatched The Prestige. Fantastic. Great stuff. Interstellar. Fantastic. I mean, the thing with that is it's one of these films that I think it does suffer a little bit with the script at times with some of the characters, but ultimately it's just an amazing adventure. But the film is his most recent work that has been, I think, divisive, but to me has been rewarding on every viewing that I've seen it, is this 2020 film Tenet, which I've not talked about in the show before, and it's an interesting contrast, somewhat unintentional, to talk about these low-key Mumblecore type films made with little plots, little budgets, and more about the characters. Then this is the complete opposite. This is a big budget studio film, less about the characters, more about the plot and the spectacle and the strong script. But what's interesting about this film is that of all of his work, this is what I find to be the most divisive and transgressive, where this came out during the middle of the COVID pandemic when theaters were just reopening. I had to drive to about an hour out of the way to go see this in an IMAX. The IMAX that I saw Dial of Destiny in, which wasn't even a full-size IMAX, but it was better than seeing it on a traditional screen. And I had such a great experience, and every time I have gone back to this film, I have found myself loving it more and more, where this is creeping up to being top three favorite of Nolan's work. Because the thing with the film is that one of the things that I find so unique with Nolan's work, and I've said it before, is that he's working on a $100 million budget. These are big studio films with big Hollywood casts. But the risks that he's taking and the filmmaking choices that he's taking, I feel like no one else, maybe besides Denis Villeneuve, if that's how you say his name, is taking. Whereas, even though I'm not I wasn't really crazy about his first Dune film, but I thought I was watching, I'm like, yeah, this is a cool film, man. And I think Blade Runner 2049 is fantastic, but these really filmmaker-driven films that are not just disposable, where I think Tenet is so unique in what it's doing. It's not, to break down, I guess, some of the plot of the film, if I can, is that we have this character played by John David Washington who is just a protagonist, intentionally so. The film is about the plot, not the characters, and basically he is on this force from this secret force where they have discovered time inversion, where these objects are coming back, but it's not time travel. So, for example, in the film, is that, if he shoots a gun, the bullet is inverted in time, so when he shoots it, he's catching it in the middle of time. And what the film does is essentially has two timelines going at once. And what's interesting is that when you get halfway through the film actually goes to the other timeline. It's a film that, for as much spectacle and as much money is on screen, I think the script is really strong in this. I think the attention to detail, and when you go and watch it again, you're not just watching it for a better understanding. Because ultimately this is going to be a polarizing film, like I think it was for a lot of people. You can watch it again and get more out of the film from a narrative standpoint. But the film is so strongly directed, and Nolan's camera work is so exciting that even if you're not totally engaged with the script, I think on a shallow level, visually what's on screen is something that I don't really see in very many recent action films. Besides, there's obvious examples of recent action films with specifically great camera work. I mean, popular like John Wick films, or like Mad Max Fury Road, or even something like Top Gun Maverick, where the action sequences are so well directed in all these films that it actually feels exhilarating, and much like the same way here. And especially because they're dealing with time inversion, the tricks that they have to do with that. There's two sequences in the film, two action sequences I think are brilliant. I guess technically it would be three action sequences, but the first of which is when the protagonist is fighting another character who is inverted. So I'm watching the film and I'm enjoying it, but I'm also thinking in the back of my head the choreography that must have gone into this, where to make it seem like this character is moving back in time, on top of actual special effects trickery, where there's just some things like a character flying against a wall that isn't possible to do. You obviously have to use some trickery, but I'm watching, I'm like, I don't even know how you would orchestrate something like this. It's much in the same way where if you watch a great martial arts film and you see these chaotic movements and you're just like, how do you even put this together? If you guys watched or listened to my 1934 episode, I was talking about that film Dames. I'm talking about the choreography and those terrific ballet sequences, and I'm just thinking I wouldn't even know where to start with something like this, man. It's so engaging. But the other sequence in this film is a fantastic car chase, man, because now not only are you dealing with an already great car chase, you're dealing with time inversion with these other cars that are crashing, that are flipping, and it's so exciting. And I think this film, unfortunately, I don't think this was the right film to release during a time when it wasn't going to be fully examined and appreciated, because most people, even when this film came out, were still uncomfortable with going back to the cinema. But let me tell you guys, when the cinemas reopened, I was on that like white on rice, man. I was eager to get back to the cinema. And I do think that the pressure that was put on studios, and especially on this film, to be the film to draw people back was not a good choice. Because ultimately, with this film, is that I don't think there was enough. I don't think there was enough attention being drawn out of this film, because you see the trailer and it's very vague with the plot, because it's a film that it's not easy to summarize the plot because there is a lot going on. I mean, at its core, yes, it's about a character who has to stop the antagonist from getting this piece and basically taking over. You can't really convey that in a 2-minute trailer, but you can convey the spectacle and the exciting action sequences. But ultimately, I keep saying ultimately, I think this film should have been delayed about a year. In 2021, when people were getting more comfortable with going back to the cinema, when theaters were reopening on a mass scale, because when I looked at the theaters that were opening around, some were opening up far earlier than others. So now you're sitting on these films that you can say that it's a bomb or it didn't do well, but ultimately, I apologize, keep saying ultimately, try not to. But when you watch, when you see the numbers coming back and you say, oh, this film's not doing well, it's like, okay, well, it's only because a couple hundred or some thousand are open like that. And by that time, people may not be interested or may not be in the public conscious, I think releasing something that would probably appeal on a wider scale rather than a film that's heavy on the script, in this case, I don't think that was a great choice. And ultimately, now I'm fully aware, man. Now every time I say that, I'm aware of this. I'm trying not to. But Warner Brothers did drop the ball on this release, and I don't blame Nolan for... I think he brought Oppenheimer to Universal, from what I can remember. But yeah, Warner Brothers, they dropped the ball on it. That whole same day on HBO to theatrical, I thought was absolute nonsense. I understand that at first, when theaters weren't opening, or people were still skeptical about going to the cinema, I understand that. Even if you wanted to release a handful of films, maybe not same day, but in a shorter window period, I got no problem with that. I understand. Obviously, people have different circumstances, people have different comfortability, yeah, you know what I mean. And I get that. But their strategy of an entire year of same-day theatricals has since, in my opinion, has had a massive impact on the state of theatrical cinema. Because now the window is shorter and shorter and shorter, where when I saw like a film like Fast X already pop up on available to rent at home, I think that's such a bad precedent for the financials of films going forward, man. Where, I recommended somebody to Dial of Destiny recently, and their first question was, is it streaming anywhere? And I said, no. It's a film that I said I really enjoyed. I thought it was a lot of fun, and that opening 20 minutes was so much fun on a big screen. Now I understand, people may not even be a fan of the cinema. I'm not a big fan of the, of like a lot of big cinema chains because, mostly just for the content. I love going to the cinema. I love the experience going to the cinema. But the content being put out has really what's been turning me off. But I'll always go to the cinema, regardless. I don't care. I'll find a way. I'll see something. I'm not gonna watch some nauseating superhero film, but if I see a theater like an hour away that's playing a film that I'm interested in, I'll go, okay, I'm gonna go to that. But we'll see what happens, man. We'll see what happens when, if numbers, decline or they improve. Because the thing is that it's not always the case. You look at films that have come out this year, and you look at like the Mario film was made just a boatload of money, and Oppenheimer and Barbie are on track to make a load of money. So I do think that, we're gonna be fine in the long run. But I do think studios not standing by the director's visions, in this case, specifically Warner Brothers not standing by Nolan, is really going to hurt them in the long run in terms of the content being put out. But with that said, yeah, Tenet, highly recommended. I think it's one of the most exciting and interesting films of recent memory. I think Nolan is one of the strongest filmmakers working, in my opinion, ever. I think he's one of the strongest filmmakers ever, but I understand that his work may not be for everybody. But check these films out. They're all good. Use your time wisely. It's a beautiful day out. Still going to be some sunlight out for a while, so take advantage of it while you can. And catch up on whatever it is you need to catch up on. In this case, I got plenty of writing accomplished. Reading will have to be accomplished, and watching will have to be accomplished. So that'll all get done in due time. But make sure you're doing well. Make sure you're eating well, drinking water. Keep yourself hydrated, eating well. Get your protein in. All that good stuff. That's all I got to say, guys. Be back next week. Thank you for listening to another episode.